What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of So You Got a Scholarship. This is the last episode of September, where I was doing an episode a week. Thank you so much for coming with me on this journey. This episode, like everything else that was happening in September, is a bit different. It is not an interview, as it were. It is a discussion, more like something very informal, talking to a friend. I talked to Desnor, who is back. Desnor has been on the show before. She's a PhD student at the University of Michigan. And so do look up the episode that I did with her. That has all the formalities to do with her academic trajectory, what she is doing, what her PhD actually is in, and all the stuff that she's really into. Her contact information will also be in the show notes, so do check that out. And we also have another podcast together, which is called Taking Into Account. So that also gives you an insight into who she is. And I am very glad to call Desnor a friend. And I was really happy to have her on this episode to close off September, where we talk about mental health in academia. We talk about the things that trigger the mental health episodes, sort of like the low moments, and the things that kind of help us try to have better mental health. I know I've said mental health so many times already, but basically that's what we talk about. And so, like I said, it's not an interview, as it were. It is more of a discussion, so you kind of get a look into just how we talk and how we vibe. I hope you do enjoy this episode. Try to do something different to end the month, on a very important topic, but also not trying to make it too heavy of a topic to listen to. So I really hope you enjoy. That being said, do follow us on social media. We are at TEDx Media on Twitter and on Instagram. We're also on Patreon, so please do support the show that way. www.patreon.com/SigsPod. If you don't want to support us on Patreon, it's okay. You can buy merch. We have merch as well. The link is in the show notes. That's another way to support the show. But most importantly, do not forget to like, subscribe, follow, leave us a review, do leave us a rating. Share the show with people. Let people know what we're about. I hope you enjoy this episode. Here I am with Desnor. So, thank you, Desnor, for coming through. This is the second time you're on here, so we're going to skip like all formalities. No need to be like, what's your trajectory? Those that don't know it, gonna check out like the first time you were here, or our other episode. Our other show, actually, not an episode. Anyways, so how are you doing, lady?
Today I'm doing really good. So that's a surprise because that was not the case a few days ago. Yeah. But I'm doing good.
Okay, that means today's a good day to talk about this. So to close off September, I just kind of want to talk about mental health in academia. This is obviously the first of so many episodes on this. I think we all know just how toxic, tiring, difficult. Sometimes there's really good points too in academia. And so what I'd like us to go through are 3 things that for each of us trigger the low moments, the difficult times with regards to our mental health, and then 3 things that sort of help us get away from that to kind of end on a high-ish note. So we'll go one each and as it goes. So let's start with, what's the first thing for you in your academic experience so far that triggers the low moments, the difficult times with mental health, and how does that show up?
I think the biggest one is when experiments fail, especially when I'm on my 20th try and I have exhausted a lot. Like, I've tried my best to troubleshoot. And sometimes, as hard as I've worked to decouple my self-worth from my productivity or how successful my work is, an experiment failing sometimes means the project cannot go forward. And then the end for this degree starts to look very far away. And then you start questioning whether or not you even deserve to be here, or what you could be doing wrong. So that's really one of the biggest triggers, especially when you've even spoken to your advisor and they're also looking at you like, why are you not getting this right? And for me, I think for academia because my productivity actually is, or because all the research is pretty much self-directed, right? Um, when you hit that mental block, it's really hard, and it triggers so many of these other questions about your self-worth, your direction, if you even deserve to be here. And that's one of the hardest things about being in academia for me and my mental health. What about you?
That's really interesting to hear. I think, yeah, I think as a scientist, I can see how you have markers, like something that just seems like a big whirlwind. Before I say what mine is, something that would be somewhat similar for people in my field is when you think, yeah, like I think I know where I'm going now. I think I know my conceptual framework. And then you read this one paper that just kind of is like, hold up, who do you think you are? Which I think I told you I did. It happened to me. Um, and yeah, a bit of imposter syndrome kind of kicks in. But one thing for me that kind of triggers the low moment is when I'm reminded about how like unstable I am. Okay, not mentally. Um, like in a life sense. So I'll explain
Mhm.
what I mean by that. So I am an international student. I am a Black woman
That
from,
is a big one.
right, and I'm a long way away from home. I do not have a lot of support for different things, and so I remember for
Mhm.
me this summer, one of the things that triggered a very very low moment was just having to move houses so much because my college was doing some renovation situation. And you would think that as someone that has been moving around, quote unquote, for the past, 10 years, I'm used to this. You would think that it wouldn't throw me off. You would think that I'm saying, you know what, okay, on to the next place. Let me just continue to do my work. But it threw me off so much. And I think just the
Mhm.
realization of that, like, I am not at home. This is like I have kind of, I'm to some extent at the mercy of the system here.
Mhm.
So that definitely, just when I feel shaken a little bit at my core, I think it gets to the core of kind of who I am and my place in the world and my place in society. My mental health kind of, whoops, yeah.
Yeah. I think when you mentioned that, that's something I've struggled with throughout this year. My experience, especially being being a student in the US, right? I've never lived in a place for more than 3 years. In undergrad, I did live in Pennsylvania for 3 years, but then there was the summer breaks that, I was off campus, and every other year I was living in a different dorm. So there was, yeah, I was basically a drifter or a traveler at the core of it. And then when I moved and got a job, there isn't like an apartment I stayed in for more than a year. And I was really excited about coming to grad school and knowing that I'm going to be in the same state for this defined number of years, and I'm not going to have to like beg for money, right? That I'm probably not going to be laid off. Um, and most of when I came to the US, I did not have family. I went to a state where I knew nobody and there were no friends. Similarly, when I moved to Boston, that was the same experience. And so coming to grad school is really important for me to build friendships. But it's hard because a lot of these people haven't known you for such a long time, and not really being able to lean on them, right? Because if I met you last week, I don't want to come and give you all this darkness, because I don't want you to run
Facts.
away. And
Facts.
so I started thinking about it even recently, like a couple of days ago, when I just kind of I lost it. I was just really sad, and I was thinking about how I felt so lonely. I felt that I had to navigate everything by myself. There's the grad school experience that's very isolating, that our friends who have jobs are not really going through the same thing, right? And I started really feeling like, wow, I don't think as I'm getting older, not to sound like all dramatic, like, oh, just because I'm in my late 20s, I feel the weight of the world. But I really just thought about it. I was like, I've been doing 8 years of this. I don't think I can do much more. It's been very taxing on my progress as a person. It requires additional energy for me to function as other people. just of all the self-soothing and, you know, just like patting yourself on the back, like, you
Right.
know, like for a child, and you're just telling yourself, you're going to do it. You can make it through. You're not weird, right? Because you think about it as you're meeting new people, you have to reintroduce yourself. You have to always think about how you present in a room as compared to when you're at home or when you have your defined social circle, your defined family. You just show up as you are,
Right.
and you don't really have to explain yourself around these people. And I was thinking about it that I think for my next chapter, I really want to be somewhere where at least I have, you know, some of my core friend groups, like for us to be more intentional about
Yeah.
um, being around our friends. And because I'm also an international student like you,
It's
there's that
hard.
uncertainty on whether or not I'm going to be allowed to stay in the country, right?
Yeah.
And so you're scrambling trying to come up with 5 million different plans that are foolproof so that you're not only successful, but you're around people who are a good support system. I know for me, going to college in the middle of nowhere was not the best thing for me.
Mm.
I like life. I like, you know, exciting things, and then making sure that you're successful enough to land in a kind of the city or the area that you want.
Mm.
Um, and then you're also surrounded by things and activities that you really care about. But whew, that experience of international student, you're Black, you are the only girl or the firstborn daughter in your family, and everyone is really like looking to you. The weight of all of that and kind of the little margin of error for you to fail can be, sometimes it's energizing, right? It pushes you. It's also part of the reason why we're as far as we are, and we're probably going to go even further than that. But sometimes it's debilitating. And
Absolutely.
you don't really have, I mean, you do have friends who are supportive, but sometimes you don't really have that experience of someone just being able to catch you so that you can fall apart, you know?
Yeah. I think for me, the thing is, okay, like I think it's actually getting to like what was my number two, which
Mm-hmm.
is community. I think the absence of community. And by that, I mean, even though, I mean, at every stage that we go to, every place that I've moved to, I've had to recreate or create community.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, the people that I am making my community in that space are people that haven't known me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as I have gone through this many evolutions. And so I think for example, people that have listened to season one will know like Tanzuna, whom I was friends with, fortunately from UWC. We went to undergrad together. Now we're not obviously in the same place, but we still friends. But I think something happened here once that I felt so misunderstood. And I was on the phone with him and he's like, but you've been doing that though. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's it.
That's my experience
That
too.
is exactly what I'm saying. I've been this way. I'm not acting in any way, right? So people felt uncomfortable when I presented who I was, like
Yeah,
the fullness of who I was. They felt uncomfortable with it because what they had thought me to be in the two times they
exactly.
knew did not have that written into the script. And so when I bring in the fullness of who I am, people are like, what the hell is going on? But listen, like I've been that way, right? It's been a thing. Like, you know, and so I think for me, community, and this is not to say like I don't see myself creating community here. I
Mm-hmm.
do. It's just, it takes so much time. It takes
Uh-huh.
getting used to the people and it takes like learning what, like, you know, I can't be falling apart all the time with them or just can't be sharing, you know, all the time with them because I don't know if they're ready for it, if they're willing even to be part of that community. Do you know what I'm saying? And yeah, and so for me there's just this whole realization of what moving around has meant when it comes to community, and a lot of it has been a lack of continuity um in, you know, kind of the presence of people that have known the different, not, I don't want to say different iterations because I think there is still that one me throughout the whole
Yeah.
thing, but kind of seeing my growth throughout the process is just, yeah, like I literally felt super isolated when I told the story, and Tanzania's like, but you always do that, and I was like, that's what I thought, you know, and now I'm out
That's
here
also
doubting myself. You know.
even for me, I'll give an example of when I was a freshman in college. Two of the there's these two women who are now really my core friend group here. we would be studying, and sometimes I'm just taking a pause and I look like I'm all over the place. And they were very concerned, like, I don't know if this person is gonna make it. And sometimes they want to sit down with me, like, hey, maybe you should be a little bit more focused, or like, where's this behavior coming from? And now that, we're 8 years into our friendship, they're like, wow, we had no idea
This was
is just
you.
who you are.
It's a thing.
And yeah, it's hard because you end up like translating yourself a lot. Especially for me, I think I present as an extrovert. Like, I'm really animated. I'm all over the place. I'm so friendly. I'm full of energy. And then there comes times when I just want to be calm. I want to be silent. And for some people, they're just not used to all of those sides of me, right? Even in the context where they meet you. And it's a funny example, but people only see you when you're going out clubbing. Then they get really shocked when you're just trying to have a cup of coffee.
You chill too? What?
Yeah. But also, on the thing about community, is it shows up in very subtle ways, right? So for example, I think for both of us, right, this whole thing of you're picking up friends, you're building community in different parts, right? One, there's the relationships that you lose, right? You experience people in a season, and then, it's just not realistic sometimes to keep that relationship going, especially to the same intensity over a long period of time. I know for me, I love to speak about things in detail, so it's not that hard for me to keep a long distance situation with someone. Other people are more, I live in the moment. Like, once you're out of sight,
I don't
they're
mind.
not, they're not, yeah, they're not even gonna call you and say, "Oh, this weekend I went and I did ABCD." But then it's also in the subtle things that I see my friends or other people who are living in, close proximity to their community. It's having a bad day and then trusting that you're going to have a friend who's going to come over and you're going to watch movies, and you don't have to actually tell them what happened in the day, but there's that, the shared experience. And it's having a spontaneous, hey, do you know what I think I want to do this weekend? And then you just pick up and you just get on with it, right? And right now it's hard when everyone is kind of scattered because it requires a lot of planning, and you miss out as if like you're living your life in waiting, right?
True.
And it's actually very painful. Building community, there's so much, there's shared experiences, and then there's not having to translate yourself, because when you're trying to translate yourself, you also miss out on opportunities to evolve, and to just explore other things. And so this whole moving around thing, it's nice because we get to meet people from different backgrounds, cultures, and all of that stuff. But it's also very challenging, especially when you have a really down moment, or even big days. Just like, it's your birthday. Do you want to have to tell everyone, hey guys, my birthday's coming up, right? So with your co-friend group, they just know, okay, around this time, your birthday's coming up, and they start putting together plans, right? Or even something like, for me, let's say this week will be my dad's death anniversary, right? But no one's going to really know that, because I'm going to be the one who has to figure out with my family how I'm going to grieve that. And yeah, it's just, those moments are actually very triggering. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, especially for those who probably haven't moved so far away from home, or people who've been fortunate enough to have like consistency, and stability in where they live. I guess, did I do a number two?
I mean, this was like, I made community my number two. So you can give me number two.
I'm going to say money.
Dead ass.
I think in undergrad, the fact that, money was a big challenge, it made that experience very depressing. It made even just basic existence was very challenging. You think about even like poverty, right? Poverty is a factor for depression in a lot of communities. And sometimes in graduate school, it's very frustrating how your stipend is actually very low. It's enough for you to live, pay
if
your
you
bills.
have a stipend.
True. It's it's enough for you to pay bills, but then it's not enough for you to chase some of your personal goals, right? Like you having to, if you had a bad day or you just want to go on a nice trip, some of those things just having and thinking about being far away from home again is you have to budget a lot more for your travel to go home to see your family than other people who have to like drive down 3 or 4 hours, right? Because
Yeah.
they just have to put gas in their car. And so money and thinking about financial security, it can all seem very impossible. Um, and sometimes it puts me in a really low place where I'm not even thinking about, oh, can I buy a house? But really, am I going to be able to make it past the next couple of months?
Sure.
Or when I graduate, just thinking ahead, how much money I need to have saved up for the time I'm waiting to apply for my work authorization or, the time between graduating and starting work.
Yeah.
How am I going to survive? Because well, in the US, I cannot work at Starbucks or just pick up some shifts at Target and kind of make ends meet. And so you're very limited in the way that you can earn money, and money does bring happiness.
Yeah. I think it's not even like, yeah, that just to segue from like the money brings happiness thing, right? Because you see it sometimes you won't even have money for your other personal goals outside paying bills. Sometimes it's not just even about goals, but guys, like we are humans, eh? Do you know what I mean? Like it's not, you know, it's nice that I will pay bills, potentially like have a place, have a roof over my head,
Mm-hmm.
right? But first of all, sometimes the roof over your head that you can afford based on the stipend you're receiving, if you're receiving a stipend to even begin with, is somewhere that really just messes up your mental health, right? Like I have been
Especially
in
in these
really
institutions where they're in very expensive
exactly, right?
cities.
Like when I was a student in London, I'm not going to lie to you, during my master's program, the worst living conditions of my entire life. It affected every single thing during like my school year. It's just not worth it. Like so you might say yes, but you could pay rent, but guys, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like I was
And the
I was
options
depressed 3 quarters of the time,
and the
right?
options are very limited in that, it sounds very, I don't know, privileged to have some preferences.
It's
But
not a
I think we
privilege.
all deserve to have some preferences, right? Like at this point, I don't think I could live with 5 people in a
Exactly.
house. I could not do it.
Yeah, me
I went
neither.
to boarding school for high school and
Been
then
there,
I went
done
to
that.
college and I lived in the dorms, and whilst working I always had housemates. It's too much, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, so that's the thing for me, right? And I think it's that is a quality of life that you can afford. And also you need to be able to experience like I'm an international student, fair and fine, and all of that stuff. I'm in a different city, different country. I need to be able to experience the place I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
studying in, right? Because I did not get to actually experience London until I got a job in my second term, like halfway through my second term. Then I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you know what? I can actually now experience London, right? So it's funny because everybody has pictures of them in like these iconic places in London. I had no time to
Yes.
even go to those places. Like you'd be like, were you in London? I was like, actually, yeah, I was like
Yeah.
24/7. And I mean, I was in central London, but like there was nothing to show for it because, hey, money did not allow, right? And so then what just happens is that like you end up living a life that's a singular life. That's just you and your schoolwork. And let us be honest, no matter how much you love what you're studying, we're
Yeah.
all multifaceted individuals. We all have more than one passion lifetime within us, and I think we
There's
need to be
also
able to explore that.
some important relationships that have formed. I have a friend who went to grad school in New York City, and she was depressed the whole time because people want to go for happy hours, they want to go to the bar, and when you think about as much as you can do some exceptional work, there's networking that comes from you
Mhm.
getting to go to some of these outings and
Precisely.
like do some of these experiences. And wow, yeah. There's so many times I thought about I was in this place, but I've never been there. I've never
Yeah.
experienced any of these things. And I was laughing because I was talking to a friend today and they were like, grad school is really fun when you have things to look forward to. Right. So just like when an experiment fails, you're really stressed out working on a certain project, you're writing, just having that opportunity to do something exciting, to take a break, engage with community, or treat yourself to an experience. That stuff, it really helps to, rejuvenate and re-energize you so that you can come back and be successful in your
Yeah.
research.
Yeah, for sure. So like, I mean, I had a similar experience actually during my master's, which I think my master's just taught me a lot, you know, where people were like, it's my birthday, we're going for brunch, and here's the address. And thankfully, you know what? Thank the ancestors, people have their menus online nowadays.
And you can take
So, so I checked the menu and I said, yo, these prices. I was like, you know what? You're a great person. I would love to get to know you better, but I can't come to your birthday brunch, unfortunately. Right. And it's like I to this day I know those people, but we're not tight.
Yeah.
Like I would have loved to be tight with them, but either things they could afford were things that I just could not afford, and it's okay. Like it's cool, but
Yeah.
like it's you do get to miss out on even forming community, which then leads to the second thing, which is the whole like I have no community, therefore like it's all interconnected, right? Okay, let's get into the third, like the last thing for me, because we gotta like get to how we deal with it. For me, one of the things that triggers low moments is thinking about, or a realization that the work that I am doing, the way I'm thinking about it, as a piece of academic product, like academic production, but also as a body of work in the world, that I seem to be the only person to whom this matters, and to everybody else.
So it's significant.
Right? And it's not about insignificance, but to everybody else is like, why should we care about these groups? Why should we care about this topic? Does it tick certain boxes? So I get pissed off when I tell people that, like, I'm going to look at this very specific smaller subsection, and then someone says, just do a survey of all the people in African countries on Twitter. I'm like, you don't really think we're the same? Like, in 2021, you think the impact that I'm trying to get to, the question I'm trying to understand, you think that a survey from all the countries on the African continent is the same as trying to go like into the very like specific granular detail. And so it just gets pretty, I think, sad for me when it seems like nobody else actually sees us as much bigger than boxes to tick on academic production, sees our knowledge, like, and I'm not saying knowledge in the sense that I'm creating knowledge, but no, knowledge in the sense that I'm going to go be learning from other people that know way more, right? To kind of go learn from that, to bring them, they don't see that as important. Just kind of sucks.
And even the framework in academia in general about having to beg to even do those analysis, like looking for research money, it's exhausting, right? You have a brilliant idea, you're writing multiple grant applications, and the constant justification where, not to be reductive or anything, but if you're working within a company, sometimes you're already on the team and then you put a pitch deck together and then people decide, yeah, this is like a project we're pursuing. But there's no real bidding that maybe you're not going to be able to afford your meals because your project wasn't chosen. And in academia, that's a very real, scenario. And I'm thinking about even like professors who are not tenured, right? Their whole life depends on them being able to, secure funding and deals. And as an international student, we're not allowed to apply for a lot of those things. I think my third one, there's so many things that trigger me. I think in the context of mental health, it's also important to think about just brain chemistry. Sometimes life is going so well. Your ducks are in a row, your bills are paid, your project is going well. And then the chemicals are just not sitting right. And that can be really challenging, right? Because you're like, there are no triggers. We're not in danger. Like we should be happy. We should be having a good time. But your brain just says, I'm not leaving. I'm not moving. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's been very challenging for me, especially for people who do have like clinical conditions, like depression or anxiety, or ADHD, right? Um, it's just very challenging to deal with some of those things, even when you're not in immediate danger. And it's also very hard for you to find help. You have community. You're struggling to get out of bed. Someone is saying, "What's the issue?" And you have to explain that my body just said we cannot get out of bed. But if you put your feet on the ground and then you raise, you raise your head, we can take 2 steps and walk out of the door. And having to explain to someone that this is actually physically impossible for me to do because I'm just not in a good space.
Yeah. I think also just the language around that, or like the ability to kind of navigate that. I think because it's interesting how we're not the only ones. Like there's a lot of people that only are and it's most of them is actually weirdly at PhD level. So you're like, I don't know how we survived all of these other
Yeah.
We're now at PhD. Now I'm suddenly learning that, oh, actually I do have like
ADHD.
I mean, I should have known.
A lot of us are just getting diagnosed and you're
literally
like, what?
But also, to be fair, like I think also just growing into the space of and there's a lot that comes with having language around that, because sometimes it's like it's important, but also sometimes it's like, so what does that mean though? Like where does it leave me? Like it also has a lot of things in it. But I
some of these come with normal experiences, right? It's normal for people to feel sad.
Exactly.
It's normal for people to feel anxious. It's normal for people not to want to do the dishes or to do laundry.
Very normal, yeah.
And so the challenge is also in you identifying whether this is just a normal experience or this is a crisis that you need serious help for. Because you're explaining to someone, hey, I'm having a really difficult time. They're like, yeah, I get it. Sure. Everybody has like, some days, bad days. And having to explain to someone that, no, this is a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, yeah, especially when you've been doing it for years. Because I think for me, I've gotten to the point where I'm now like, is this as bad as the last one? Or is this as bad as that time in undergrad when this thing happened? So now, and then it's just kind of like you gaslight yourself into eternity
and
until
then thinking,
somebody else tells
I made it through though. I made
do you
it
know
through.
what I mean?
So
we move.
What do you mean? Yeah, we
move. We move, but we don't. No, for real. Okay, so now let's go with like 3 tips or things that we just generally do to kind of move, as it were, or not move. But yeah, do you want to go first?
Medicine. So
yeah,
I'm putting medicine in both having therapy and also having the support of maybe taking antidepressants, and working out, because working out is medicine. And those are really, really big tools to have in, what is it called? In like your bag, because those things really help to propel you and to, get the wheels turning so that you can keep making it to the next point. Okay, you had one meltdown this time. Okay, how do we get you out of this one? Because another one is probably going to come again.
And that's okay.
How do we keep moving? And for me, medicine is really, really good for me.
And I think the good thing as well, like just kind of to get on a pragmatic level, right? To anybody who's listening, is that if you're part of an institution, most likely your institution can help with resources to do this and navigate ways around this. Like, my current therapist is actually provided by the school, and Lord knows, like, I really appreciate her. Like, gosh, man, I'm sure to say her name. Sometimes I'm just like, if it wasn't for you,
right? I'm gonna put her in my acknowledgements.
For real, like that ass. Like she gonna be in my acknowledgements because man, like, yeah, she did some heavy lifting, and even things like the gym. Sometimes, you want a free gym, figure out a way to get a free gym through your institution if money's an issue.
For a lot of us, it's free. I don't know. Oh, I mean, here it's free.
Yeah, here where we have random systems, some colleges don't have gyms, and I don't know. All I know is that I got a college that's got a gym, so we're out here for free. Thank you.
Those are also things to think about when you're evaluating schools.
Oh yeah, I say that's why I should listen to the Journey to Grad School. I told you. You need to have a grad tracker. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's number one, medicine for sure, for sure. For me, number one, I think I'll make this number one and then the other one like later. But for me, number one is actually a willingness to lean in to the darkness.
Yes.
You don't gotta move all the time. Baby girl, it's okay. Like you don't gotta like we move. Not every day we move. You know, sometimes we don't, and that is okay. And I think for me, with one of the most recent times that I experienced this like intense freeze response. I'm usually a freeze and fawn person, so I'm not usually like a flight fight. No, that takes too much energy. For me, freeze fawn, where they. So when I I remember trying to to continue to like to find ways of just get out of it, snap out of it, but leaning into it was actually the thing that I needed to do. And that can be done in very different ways. So I think you want to find ways that work for you. Sometimes it's alone time, which for me really, really helps. Sometimes it's to actually just listen to your body. So you don't want to move today. Okay, then don't move today. Right? You want to cry today. Okay, absolutely. Weep like a child. Right? Just lean into that, journal or whatever it is that allows you to also, because a lot of the times I think we try to think that this is like an external thing, but sometimes your body is trying to tell you something as well.
I learned that this year because my body said, excuse me. Excuse me.
Hi, please wait. Hi, I got a question. But your body does. And so for me, that is number one. It might not be a tool, but leaning to the darkness.
But when you say lean in, I think another big thing on leaning in is naming. Name the emotion you're feeling.
Yeah.
And then get curious. Sit in it, right? As you're sitting in the darkness. And then you say, so what does this mean? And why do I feel this way? So sometimes there are real triggers, right? There's a core issue at the center of everything. And so when you sit down and you kind of try to solve it like a puzzle, right? And not that you're going to unlock it like an escape room and then all of a sudden like just get out.
Right.
But then sitting there in that darkness, you start to understand yourself a lot more.
Right.
And then being able to, sometimes there's even ways that you can avoid being in the situation again. Right.
And that's actually linked to medicine. Because for me, sitting in the darkness alone was a bit like I tried and I couldn't get to it. And then it was my therapist with her questions and her knowledge of previous sessions who made a link that I was not going to make. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I could have sat in that darkness for 3 more weeks. I was not going to make that link. She made a breakthrough.
To some of these psychology pages on Instagram because they can be very helpful. Not the ones that like what's it called? Sub your ex or anything like that. No. The ones
that the actual ones from actual
the ones that talk about the different attachment styles and the different distress responses. So many books, even CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy, stuff like that. There's definitely ways, like if the lights are off in your house, don't you go into the light box and try to figure
it out. Yeah. Good metaphor. I love that. Yeah, no, for me, definitely. All right, let's go into a second one. What's the second one for you?
Funny thing, the first trigger, one of the triggers is actually one of the most helpful things. Community.
That's why you gotta build one.
So many times people uplift you without even knowing that you're in a dark time. Because sometimes you don't even have to tell people you're sad. You just know that if I'm going to go and kick it with my friends, it's just going to uplift my spirits. They don't have to do something specific. It doesn't even have to be that they're focusing on me.
For sure.
But the fact that they're around, one of the best things that have happened out of grad school so far has been building community because they have carried me and also prevented me from also just falling into some of these dark pits. Because, you feel safe. You don't feel like you're in any immediate danger. And then they continue to pour into you simply by existing. They don't really always have to do something for you.
Precisely. I think community is definitely important. My number 2 is kind of like community, but I really like to keep it a bit separate in a way for a reason. I call it the DFZ, which is the department free zone. That is to say that
Yes.
I have people I got people that are not from my department. And for me this is important. And just and sometimes it's not just like not from my department, but also just not in
Your
academia,
research group,
like when we
yeah.
meet, we're not even just. So for me, for example, like I have people that are also doing like DPhils and stuff, but not in my department, and those are my community, and I put those in the community part that you talked about. The ones that I'm talking about, for example, for me right now is my capoeira group. Guys, when I tell you the fact that 3 days a week I go into this space where nobody even like people didn't even know I don't even know what they're doing. To this day, you ask me like, what do these people do outside capoeira? I'm telling you, I don't know.
We just go you don't there, even know their full names.
Especially when it comes to capoeira where you're given a different name. It took me ages to even know the other people's real names, right? And then so I'm in this space where we're just kicking each other, getting kicked and learning, and we're sweating and we're singing and we're getting hurt, and it's just beautiful. But what that space actually did for me was take me out of academia completely and remind me that life is indeed much bigger, which I know. But when a lot of the times in academia, you kind of get caught up in the minutia, right? Like, and this stuff that really doesn't matter. Like some of the stuff that people be talking about really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Like I couldn't care less, right? I couldn't care less.
Some of the gossip, you're just like, it's not that
It's
serious.
really not that deep. I don't care that you wrote papers to each other because you hated each other, and then they're both in the same academic journal. I honestly could not care. But like and so just being in that community. So I think it's important that you find your own department free zone where you kind of have a community. And what that does for me is that it has allowed me. So for example, like my professor like wrote me a message once when I was like really in a dark time. He didn't even know I was in a dark time. I just didn't show up to class for like a week. I'd shown up to one and didn't show up. And then he's just like, I think you need to come back to class. You give me like the sense that you're a warrior. Now, those that know me, once you give me a compliment, I have to live up to it.
Some of us love that positive reinforcement.
That positive reinforcement, the inner child in me, as they say in the streets these days, is just like, listen, you have seen something in me, that's I will show up. And it had nothing to do with my work, but trust me, I showed up. And when I just started to show up there, I started showing up everywhere else. So DFZ for me is definitely a must-have. What's your number 3?
And they're also, one more comment, they're also not as jaded as you, right? So in graduate school, everyone knows that, okay, we're always sometimes going through it. And then there's those people who are outside of it, who uplift you and show you a world of possibility outside of the things that, like the work that you're working on.
Precisely.
My number 3 is change of setting. That could be going to the woods, going into nature, or just traveling to a different place. I think, traveling to a different place kind of resets you. It helps you to change your perspective. And not in a, oh my God, you're speaking to people who speak different languages or they're so different from you. No, I mean, just
that too, but
I mean, that's true. But sometimes just you being in a different space, you think differently, and you might not even have to speak to anyone. It just, you're on a plane, you land, and poof, it's gone. The sadness is gone. There's the excitement of experiencing new things, changing your routine, and breathing different air. I think about how when I went home, my God, when I left America, the air was different. And you know how those sunsets, the Zimbabweans and those
Southern African sunset is unrivaled. I do not like come at me.
The air was more crisp. It's just different, and it just rejuvenates you. So I think that's a big one. And sometimes you don't even have to have lots of money. Get on a bus, go to a different city, stay in a cheap Airbnb, a hostel,
even a day trip. Like I've literally done day trips to random day hikes because it's a free hike. All I had to do was take a train, and it was very cheap. And I agree, that's useful.
Yeah, and then it does, like, day trips don't disrupt your normal routine, for example, right? Because you could just go, come back, especially when you have a time crunch. So
and they're low effort.
Yeah. And it forces you to think differently. You're now planning something completely different. Sure. Or bonus if your friends do it for you. Because sometimes my friends will just be like, you don't sound like you're okay. Come here. And then they'll plan the itinerary. Or, okay, I see that you're low. Here's an itinerary. Where would you want to go? And then they'll give you the itinerary so you don't have to figure everything out by yourself. So
that I'm going to link this to like my third thing, which you said you're thinking about something different. I think for me, one of the things that helps keep me sane is I create. I continue to create whatever it is. Okay, I know that some people are going to say, where's the creative later? Guys, please don't ask me about the creative writing at the moment. We're creating other things like this podcast. I consider it a creation. Right now, I think for me, this podcast is definitely something that keeps me sane because it also, with creation, you kind of are putting something out there and being vulnerable in a different way. And I quite like that. I play guitar, learning a whole different instrument as well right now, just for like shits and giggles. And
I want to learn the sax, but I don't have sax money or sax lessons money.
Well, yeah. So actually, when it comes to money, so if you do want to sponsor us, we will do a 3-hour episode if we get to 4,000 pounds on Patreon. We dare you.
We'll keep it exciting. We talk about a lot of things in life.
We double dare you. Like
entertainment,
we'll talk about,
pop culture.
Anything you want us to talk about for 3 hours. Not like we won't edit this shit. 3 hours.
Nothing is off limits.
Nothing is off limits. You can even submit questions. If we get to 4,000 pounds and you have given more than 10 pounds, you can ask us questions. No, but all this to say, thank you so much, Desnor, for coming through today. It's been lovely to hang with you as always, and I look forward to the next one because you're going to be on another one.
Yeah, and people should listen to our podcast.
True, you should also listen to the other podcast, which is called Taking Into Account. It is also a production of TEDx Media House, co-hosted with Desna. Season 2 coming next year, early next year. We're really excited. Can't tell you what it's about, but do check out season 1.
But it's different.
It's different. It's different. You know how they're all thematic. Each season has a theme, so we can't tell you what the theme is. But it's gonna be great. So thank you so much, Desna, and I'll put your info in the show notes. People to follow you, to ask you questions, to send money, because you know what, we're trying to minimize them triggers.